I had a totally different experience surrounding 9/11. I had just gotten back from studying abroad at Oxford University, and I was excited for my senior year to start. It started on a Thursday because the day before was Labor Day. I couldn't sleep the night before because I was too excited for school, because I knew all my teachers and they helped me get into Oxford. I'd gotten up early that morning because I couldn't sleep because I was too excited about school, and it seemed like that year was going to be a great year for my senior year. I had turned on Good Morning America because it had become a morning ritual. Towards the end of Good Morning America, the news interrupted with footage of a plane hitting one of the World Trade Centers. I couldn't believe what just happened. A few seconds later, there was another plane flying into the towers. The area I was in had become a media blackout zone because of the reception towers on top of the Twin Towers. The media blackout felt like an eternity, but it probably lasted a couple hours. I can remember thinking about what just happened and wondering, was this domestic terrorism or foreign terrorism? Because I had done quite a bit of research on this subject. We didn't know who committed these acts or if another act was going to happen. We were sitting in the dark, wondering, not knowing. The media's reaction to 9/11 was immediate and spread like wildfire. The media gave us all the information they had at the time they had it at this point in time. It seemed like all that everyone was talking about now was 9/11 and what had just happened. It seemed like that for a long time. 9/11 had brought everyone together, which was interesting because just months earlier we were protesting about the government and how we wanted them to stay out of our personal lives, and now we wanted them to become our new saviors. It seemed like 9/11 was all anyone could talk about. A few months later, we found out the organization responsible for it, which turned out to be Al-Qaeda, which would become known as a world terrorist organization. At this point, I started to notice in the news some of the tactics that Nazi Germany used in their media, which was interesting to see. We started to use those. Now to me, it doesn't seem that it was intentional use of these tactics, but an accidental use of these tactics employed, not knowing that they were doing it, the same as in Nazi Germany. At this point, most channels were about 9/11, the same thing about 9/11. The group that had done it, it seemed the media still covered the local news, but it seemed more mandatory than anything. The news was focused on the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda and the discovery of their leader, Saddam Hussein. Now here's Tona speaking about how 9/11 affected war, media, and politics.
An anti-war online organization attacking U.S. policy in Afghanistan.
Changes in politics, warfare, and media was a rapid process after 9/11. Updates in the technology we use, news from the media, and the process in which conflicts are dealt with quickly became intertwined as people became more connected than ever. The internet evolved to the point where it was commonplace to have easily accessible, especially after 2005 and the invention of the iPhone. Now with a phone that can call, text, surf the web, and take pictures, people were able to connect with each other from anywhere in the nation. But with this came the ease of access to information as well as an easier way of providing false information. Info on the internet quickly became something that you had to research and fact-check as you looked through several reliable resources. Through it all, in 2006, a man named Julian Assange created a website that stood out amongst the rest, WikiLeaks. With the beginning of WikiLeaks came the leaking of information that was previously classified or hidden to the public with an unbiased approach, with people being able to look at the documents directly after being published to the site, keeping the people who submit the documents anonymous. As conflicts changed, arose, and died down, terrorism started to be seen in a different light. Politicians and the public would start to see acts of terror such as 9/11, the shoe bomber, and the Unabomber, and see reasons for heightened measures of security and more invasion of privacy, such as increased airplane security, the Patriot Act, which gave enforcement to more abilities against terrorism, and Homeland Security being put into place. The more people felt afraid, the more they were willing to give up their privacy for protection. The US used this to encroach on people's privacy while using a similar reason to go to war with Iraq and Afghanistan to end terrorism. This quote-unquote axis of evil tended to include Middle Eastern countries usually associated with terrorism at the time, and a few other countries that the US generally had a bad view on. In addition to the US's superstition about terrorism, they also began to take a stance on imperialism and corrupt governments by showing support for the Syrian rebellion during the war in Darfur. And as politics moved forward, so did the innovation and advancement of the technology that we used in our everyday life.
Technology's innovation happened very fast and so suddenly. Whole new universes of musical discovery and finding your own identity opened up. Email's ever-growing presence broke down walls of isolation. Installment of the International Space Station, which was straight out of comic books and movies we grew up on. Invention of various vaccines like the ones for HPV and H1N1 were major milestones in the progression of medicine. The evolution of technology as we know it, it is happening very fast, so of course certain fallbacks followed. Napster's creation meant seemingly free music for everyone when in reality it meant artistic extortion and sabotage. Hit songs like Music by Madonna and I Disappear by Metallica were pirated before their release through Napster. Lawsuits of course followed and brought down Napster eventually, but its multiple services would live on through clones forever. Peer-to-peer messaging was being integrated everywhere like email and text messaging. Because of the nature in which we put together short messages in peer-to-peer services, our minds were drastically changing, subconsciously shortening thoughts into order to fit them into non-existent screen notifications. Meanwhile, certain aspects of technology's evolution created hope and admiration. The progression of International Space Station's construction meant different countries peacefully coming together, all for the means of understanding the cosmos. Engineering our very own immune systems to overcome the horrors of disease. While movies like Back to the Future and Men in Black may have gotten our hopes up with their flashy technologies, the world was still moving forward in many ways we never saw coming. Everything had to be new and different in order to catch up with the new change.
I have to say there were some pretty creepy things fashion-wise in the early 2000s. The zigzag part was never really a good look. And I know that they're coming back now, but Jenkos were really big when I was graduating. You could fit an entire VCR in your pockets and still have enough room in them to store your textbooks in the same pocket. I was always a fan of that era's music, but as a drama geek in high school, I'm not sure that it impacted me the same way as it impacted others. My goth phase started mostly because of stories like Hot Topic becoming popular. I remember standing in front of my high school playing hacky sack in 6-inch stiletto lace-up knee-high black patent leather boots. While talking about major things from the 2000s, you have to look at the major artists that came out, such as Eminem, Lady Gaga, Linkin Park, and Green Day. Along with those, there were amazing TV shows. One example of this is the show Survival, which came out in the early 2000s. Now it's on season 42. Another absolutely interesting show to me was Doctor Who. When the new Doctor Who released, it was just absolutely fascinating with how they managed to fuse romance, sci-fi, and adventure all together in one show. Out of all of the shows that came from the 2000s, I would have to say that Doctor Who has really impacted me the most, seeing as how I have Doctor Who tattoos. Another very influential show was RuPaul's Drag Race, which premiered in 2009. I don't remember much of it originally, but the thing that caught my eye was that it was a very important show that was strictly about the LGBTQ life. I've missed a single episode. I've watched all of the spin-offs, and I just have to say that TV as a whole from that era was really about becoming who you are and accepting who you are. I remember rushing home from school every time it ended to see which video was rated #1 on the show TRL. One of the biggest things for music in the 2000s was the creation of the websites Napster and Livewire. And they were fantastic for a lot of people because it was really most people's first forte into being able to stream music and being able to have access to specific songs all the time and being able to create your own mixed CDs. Another huge thing that came out in the 2000s, for me at least, was being able to watch shows online or being able to see videos online. One huge thing of this was Netflix, where I'm not sure if it was in the 2000s when they did it, but they used to send you CDs and DVDs that you could watch movies on, and you could only have a certain amount of them at a time before you'd have to send them back. Some really major pop icons from the 2000s were people like the Kardashians, which I didn't really understand. Lady Gaga came out and started huge in the 2000s. One large part of the pop culture from the 2000s that really affected me was when the Marvel movies started coming out, such as Iron Man and Wolverine. Another huge thing that impacted me was when the prequels for Star Wars came out. They came out in the early 2000s. I think they ended in 2005. In conclusion, there was a lot of really good music and a lot of good movies that came out. The media is a huge contributor to who I become, and many things influenced me and who I become in the world after 9/11. Continuing on about music.
When Seven Nation Army first came out, I couldn't begin to tell you how powerful it made me feel. The guitar and drums sounded angry but motivated, and that riff was just... it was something else. My 13-year-old self thought it was the peak of music. It also got me into alternative rock and introduced me to Gorillaz. Feel Good and Corporate was the first Gorillaz song I ever listened to. I thought that the concept was weird though, seeing a bunch of virtual characters performing just appeals me. I preferred to see the faces of performers, but friends of mine loved it and I have to admit, it grew on me. When it came to movies, I watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy and I was in love. I hadn't read the books, but I wanted to after watching the movies. I had huge crushes on Aragorn and Legolas.